great integration of migrant populations, you know, but there is not a lot on racialization, but you talk a lot about interracial relationships, but not how that.
Absolutely. And that is the complexity of the story that comes in the book. And one of the chapters which is about narratives of Detroiters, and then it comes back to theorizing about race and racialization, is that the sundown history of this town for African Americans was a real history, right? So they still, after the town started to become diverse, they didn't choose to live in Bearstown. They worked, but they lived still in Springfield and places like that. But that is the argument I make about that it is often simplifying racialization based on color of skin. Because in this context, you will see that the native-born Euro-Americans absolutely have this stratification, and Detroiters talked about it, the narratives of West Africans demonstrated, and also Latinos and whites, that to a certain degree, the West Africans are seen as, are placed higher in the social hierarchy than African Americans. And one of the Detroiters put it very, very succinctly, said, you know why? They think they prefer, even though they are immigrants and are not citizens, but they are treating them with better respect and more care than they treat us. And then the other one jumped in and said, yes, because they lynched us, not them. And that is the historical understanding of how both the Africans are ignorant of that history, but also soon enough when they realize that how these existing hierarchies are, they try to associate themselves or disassociate themselves farther from the African Americans. And that the history of slavery in this country is not something that could be reduced to color of skin, because we will see how it plays out. So the discussion of how we need to break out of these wooden boxes of belonging, I call it, citizenship, for example. It means nothing, the Detroiter is a citizen, the Mexican is not a citizen, but when you look at the social stratification and the way in the imagination and behavior of people they are stratified, the citizenship of African American Detroiter goes nowhere. The racialization, again, that breaks out of this category of assuming that it is color, because the French accent of these black bodies places them very differently. So the narratives of them says, oh yeah, these are black, the new public, the new, I don't know how they put it, new people who have come, they are black, but, and this but is very important, but they are educated, but they are French speaking. So kind of trying to stratify within that, right? So this is the complexity of it. It helps by looking at the interracial dynamics of not only seeing immigrant and white, but seeing within immigrant dynamics between Africans and Latinos is a part of the story that I talked about. The dynamics between African immigrants and African Americans is another part of the story. So I didn't focus on that. I focused on the dispossession and displacement and social global restructuring. But it is very important, and that's why I emphasize that I'm just giving one sliver. That whole discussion is there, and it cannot be treated as an annex. It is fundamental to how the racialization of people hierarchically is allowing this town to be revitalized. Thank you for bringing it up.
So I want to continue with this a little bit more. I know it wasn't part of what your research was all about, but I really am interested in this interrelationship between the West African, the ones from Mexico, the ones from Detroit. Just kind of what all did you see in terms of their interrelationship, other than on the soccer field, where we might experience young people kind of breaking down some kinds of barriers? But were there tensions that were in place?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
It is kind of other research that has looked at dynamics of African Americans and African immigrants. Caribbeans have been often the top subject of study. it is in line with what they find. Latinos and African immigrants, they find cases of, it is, how would I put it? It was less of a, it was greater possibility of creating solidarity and emerging understanding of solidarity there than amongst African Americans and all of the rest. And this is what scholarship has shown. Even especially when integration happens, immigrants are more likely to integrate. The one group that always stays segregated and not melting into the pot is the African American group. And in Beerstown, we see the same treatment. Their narratives, I mean, you will read, it's as much as some of the Euro-American native-born locals have come to terms with accepting Latinos or these highly educated, good blacks within, amongst themselves. They still, the Detroiters were talking about putting their window down, and it's terrible the kind of things that they experience, and it's nowhere. I mean, when you hear their story, it's very contrasting to the rest. So I think it was very important for me to not have this rosy picture of here is where people find each other, and you know, it's the interracial, inter-immigrant, inter-social dynamics are tentative, are fragile, and actually I don't know if today, with the situation that we are facing under Trump, what is unfolding. And I didn't, in the book, even last year it got published, I didn't assume that these are stable solidarities or understandings. I very much was conscious that any crisis could put these people against each other.
So could I, one more step here. So did the people from Detroit, the African Americans from Detroit, have the same kind of external social support systems?
No, sorry to cut you.
Yeah, that's right.
That's one of the interviews was about that. So I talked with I called her Carol in the book, so about the strategies for immigrant workers, that they leave part of their family, and she said it wouldn't make sense for me to leave my child back in Detroit to be cared for by my mom. It would cost her the same thing that it would cost me, and plus, you know, why would I do that, right?
But was there anything like remittances that were going back to Detroit? Was there that kind of social connection back to Detroit, an escape valve, that sense that when my time is up here, I can always go back to Detroit?
They were all trying to move out, but not moving back to Detroit. So we had a long conversation, and I described that scene. You know, it went like to 1 or 2 a.m., and they were all like, "We want to be in the book. You need to put, you know, our voices in there." But they were telling about racism that they were experiencing, and that they want to move away. And some of them did. I followed, you know, one of them moved to Florida, the other one to Iowa, of all places. But they didn't want to be in Beerstown because of what they were experiencing. And they didn't want to move back to Detroit. And they were talking about the conditions that they had really fled from. And Detroit was not in the picture as a place of going back to. There is a hand back there, but if yours is immediately about this, Jeff.
Wait, yeah, I was just in terms of like the framing. So in the book, do you also include African Americans in this framing of a displaced or dispossessed?
Displaced and dispossessed,
awesome.
Yeah. So all the 3 chapters, one chapter is dispossession and displacement of Michoacan and Mexican workers. One chapter is dispossession and displacement of Togolese workers, and one chapter is about dispossession and displacement of African American workers. And I go into Subaru's work, which has been amazing, phenomenal work on understanding what happened to Detroit, its boom and bust. And that chapter, it's called, actually, if I could get that chapter is called Detroit, the first third world city of US. And that's what the New York Times article actually called. And I borrow from that because that is important. So Detroit, the first third world city of the US, and that was very key coverage of Detroit when the bust started to happen. So I build on that and talk about it, that these are all displaced people. and to talk about them as immigrants, international, local, and although, you know, we think of the Detroiters as being local, in the narratives and the eyes of the locals, they are as immigrant as the other ones. So one of the locals was talking about, we have two different kinds of African immigrants. The French-speaking ones and the ones from Detroit. You know, so she puts Detroiters as African immigrants after, you know, so those are the narratives that tells us, doesn't matter that these are crossing national, you know, what do you call it, borders. The African Americans crossed cultural borders and, you know, coming from urban to rural, coming from all of that. So this is very, you know, that definitely is an important, was very key to understanding of how we should conceptualize them. And international immigration or migrants is really obscuring that these are all displaced people. And that is how we should call them, because when we call them immigrants, then we are obscuring the violence that has brought them to the place. Please.
Yes, did you find any evidence over time of upward mobility on the part of the West Africans, say from meatpacking to more professional work?
Some of them do. So I said 58% have 4 years of college or higher. Considering the high number of people with education, I know of 2 cases that they managed, their English was good enough, they managed to get admission to a master's program, and both of them are now working the kind of nice jobs. One of them is actually hired in Champaign, social work, whatever it's called, department, and the other one in public health in Springfield. And I don't say they are the only 2. I'm saying they all try. In the beginning, there is a lot of trying, but the imperial system of education we have here, we don't recognize degrees from anywhere else. So they, even if they have a PhD, if they are doctors, if they have, you know, masters or undergraduate degrees, it gets nullified. So most of them have to start from, you know, English is a matter of course, a challenge, but even if they got their English fine, they have to start from the beginning. Then you are having full-time jobs. Sometimes Cargill workers are 6 days a week working, back-breaking jobs. The possibility of going to English classes after you have finished your shift is really hard. So that becomes a condition on which they get, you know, I talk about in the book that Mexicans are chained to these jobs through their legal status. They are undocumented and therefore they don't have mobility. The West Africans is through debt, and also, you know, they basically, they cannot move because they have to stay in these jobs to pay back their debt, and if they were in maybe a bigger city or somewhere closer, they could say, okay, I move from this job to something that is easier, but they are not. So they just becomes harder. I don't say it's impossible, but it's hard. Yes.
So this is, I hope, a quick question, because I think we're near the end of the time period. But I really appreciate kind of the insights that you've given about kind of the subsidy that the home ascending countries are actually providing to the U.S. labor force. I think that's really interesting. But I'm thinking back to when the Japanese and the Chinese came to the United States, and I'm thinking particularly about Hawaii, which I'm not from Hawaii, but I kind of know a little bit of the history, and kind of the social hierarchy that was imposed by the managers and owners of the plantations. And so at the time of the migration, we won't call it immigration because I know my grandparents intended to go back to Japan when they first came out here. But at the time, at least in Japan, the literacy rate was very high. And a lot of the displacement that occurred was voluntary because of the inheritance system. So first sons get everything, nobody else gets anything. Land is limited, people leave, right? But anyway, it was that literacy and kind of the mental discipline, I guess, that made it easier for the management or the owners of the plantation to kind of identify Japanese and Chinese and then the native Portuguese and
So you're asking if that
If
exists in
that,
the
yeah, to
meat
what
pack?
extent does that?
Absolutely.
dynamic
It,
cover?
there is a bonus system for recruitment. So first they sent mobile recruiters out to places with high rates of unemployment, but border towns to recruit. Once they did the first round of recruitment, then they rely on workers themselves to bring in other minoritized workers. And they offer bonus. So the bonus for Mexican worker who stays through the probationary period of 3 months and remains in work is $50 to $100. So when there is a lot, of course it fluctuates based on the need of the plant. But same time, when a Mexican worker would be bonused for $50 to $100, for a West African worker was around $300. So those are the narratives I got from them. And it has to do with being higher educated,
Right.
being easier to usually figure out and find out, and so they were treated as more attractive labor force that they would want to have.
Okay.
Once the ICE raid happened in 2007, that is when they started going after. They sent recruiters to Detroit and to Little Havana in Miami, and also one they sent somebody to the island, Puerto Rico, and brought a lot of legal. So their stratification, I don't know if there was bonus system involved. I didn't have their numbers, but I know these two groups I had. People talked about what was the price tag attached to it.
No, that's interesting. Thank you.
Maybe I ask the last question. Yeah, I know you got this book, so I'm just curious to know that you have like any further plans for this line of research and what are those plans?
Yeah, thank you. Well, there are two things going on. I have this issue of displacement. So I'm currently teaching a graduate seminar, which I hope would build up to something more. And it's called Global Displacements. So partly I see this place, like Beerstown is a company town. So what do we learn by looking at refugee camps? Which, refugees and displaced people now are the fastest growing population in the world, right? So this fastest growing population of the world that we call them refugees, oftentimes are, produced through conflict, violence, war, climate change, and there is a vast literature on that. But the literature also talks about it as permanent temporariness. So I think that lens of seeing places like this, company towns, as really they are camps of displaced people that are permanently temporary, or they think of themselves as temporary, but they are permanent temporariness. So that conceptual lens of understanding global displacements, to talk about this not through the lens of immigration, which really is more relevant to a last century's movements. This century's global mobilities could be better understood through the lens of displacement, and that would include displacements by dispossession and labor, or war, or climate change, etc. So that is the line of work that I want to continue. There is another project that also shows African migration. The number of people born in Africa coming to this country since 1980 has 1980 or 1960. I'm not sure, but in the last so many decades, has been larger than the entire number that were displaced in chains in the transatlantic move, right? Brought into this country as slaves. So this great move by native-born Africans to this country that needs to be understood. Where are they going? And one of my research assistants actually did the spatial kind of analysis of where they're going. And still they are concentrated in metropolitan regions, Minneapolis and California, Los Angeles, but there is a fastest growth are in non-metropolitan counties. So the question is it these kind of rural industries that are low paid, that are using this modern slavery that is coming in, and are they the ones that are observing them? Otherwise, why are they, highest growth is in rural towns, non-metropolitan counties. So that's another one that I need time and students to further develop. And my ongoing project is called Insurgent Midwest Transnational Dialogues for a Humane Urbanism. And it's in line with another set of projects and research I've done, which it's not directly linked to this one, and that is about social movements, urban movements, that I have followed in South Africa, where most of my work was done, Latin American cities, and we are bringing together urban grassroots movements in Chicago, in Mexico City, and in Cape Town to talk with each other as they strategize their fights against urban displacements. These are people fighting against evictions and gentrification, right? So there is not only process of urban displacement, but how are grassroots fighting against it, and how could they learn from each other, and solidarities that exist. Some of them are already working with each other. So the project is to facilitate that. So this is ongoing and almost ongoing and wishing list.
Great. Yeah, I think it's time now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for giving your